Thank you so much, Sonny. It's so good to have you back, too. So, it's the Sunday before Valentine's Day, and Nicole and I thought that we would share a little bit of our love story with you and talk about the spiritual principles behind it. And the theme is called Once Upon a Time. So which of the two of us do you think came up with that theme? I actually gave her credit in the first service for us both talking together, but that actually goes to Reverend Josh. So we're teaching a foundations class together, and for those of you who know me, you write down what spiritual aspect of the person that they are, and 6 people wrote, and 4 of mine were wisdom. So you guys all know that I love wisdom stories, and I will sneak a little bit of that in today. But one thing I always teach, and I really believe this to the depths of my soul, is that if we really want to be whole, if we want to approach wholeness, we have to integrate that part of us that we do up on the mountaintop with that part of us that we don't do so well, or we shy away from. So for me, my journey has absolutely been from the head to the heart. And this young lady has taught me how powerful it is to be vulnerable. And so my journey has grown from the head to the heart. And I'm in good company, too, because that was Ernest Holmes's journey, too. And I would venture to say that's in our entire movement's journey. We were so much into the head 20 or 30 years ago. And we've allowed this heart space to expand. So that's my journey. And if I want to do the things that I want, such as if I want to take this sacred teaching of finding my sacred duty or dharma, as the Hindus tell us, or if I want to have this Jungian concept of actualization, of taking this beautiful seed that I have and doing what I need to make it the greatness that it can be, I have to integrate these things. So I've snuck my 2 minutes of wisdom in for you, and I'll get back on topic now. So a story a lot of you don't know is one of the most influential, I'm not just going to say influential, the one that brought us together, that ignited this spark that turned into this flame that's now Michael and Nicole's life together, was Reverend Josh. But he did it somewhat unwittingly. He didn't know what he was doing, at least on the surface. So Nicole had just become a practitioner, and Reverend Josh sent out this message to the longer-term practitioners, which yours truly was a member of, seeing if there was anybody that would be available to be mentors. And my life was busy. I was had my full-time job and was in the middle of ministerial school, and I had this horrendous relationship I was involved in, so I was juggling way too many balls. But yet at the last minute, I said yes, like 30 minutes before the due date, I said yes. And lo and behold, Nicole had told Josh, look, the only mentor I want is Michael. And so we became mentor and mentee. And we found that as we had deeper discussions, we found that we had always had a lot of respect for each other for different reasons. The one thing that I respect Nicole more than anything is the power of her faith and the steadfastness of her faith. And so she's enthusiastic and joyful on stage, but that faith that she has, that absolute assurance, if anyone believes that there's a powerful good in the universe and we can make use of it, it's this young lady right here. And has demonstrated it time and time again. And so it's interesting because people say we're a lot different, and we are. So we have 2 ways that we do things. And when we teach these principles, I always teach you, take what works for you and use that. Just put the other aside. If it works for you someday, that's fine. If it never works for you, that's fine. So this is Nicole's way. She makes maximum use of impressing her thoughts upon the universal law. Affirmations is Nicole. So wherever we go in the house, there's affirmations. In the car, there's affirmations. When you think you couldn't find another place for an affirmation, you find it. But that's one thing, but what's so meaningful to me is to watch her, because she almost has this stern, resolute face when she's doing this very strict, very disciplined spiritual practice. And then that stern, resolute face turns into radiant, bubbly, enthusiastic joy when she achieves what she went out to accomplish. So that's Nicole's way. And I love her for it, but Michael's way is a little different.
But.
So, as regimented, as structured as I am at life in my secular job as an engineer, I'm a total intuitive person when it comes to spiritual practice. My best place to do spiritual practice is a dark night on the ocean. So a part of me about wholeness, and it's important because that's the most important thing in our relationship, is we both got to a place of being whole before we got there. So I actually like to go hang out in the darkness. I don't think that life has to be a Pollyanna, radiant aspect of life. There's pain, there's suffering, and there's darkness. And as long as you keep it in perspective, there's something that can be learned. You can learn by it. So I like to hang out in the darkness and look for that morsel of wisdom, that morsel of truth. And when I find it, something special happens to my life. I have this idea, and now I can manifest something that I would have not in a million years come up with in my conscious mind. And so I love doing that. And I have structure when I need to have structure, but I love saying, okay, divine, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And I give it to you. And when you give it back to me, I just make use of it. So it's really interesting because these are two, very, very different ways. And they're really not opposites, because the metaphysics, the old metaphysics, and the new physics tell us they're complementary. Because these two ways, it's not an either-or universe, and this just proves it. It's a both-and universe. What works for her works very well. What works for me works very well. And I find that we've integrated our lives together, and we've both grown from it. And so my way of doing things works, for the most part, pretty well, but it's gotten me into trouble with past relationships. So one thing I've always loved is I've always loved to have relationships with strong-willed women. But I made one very small mistake prior to Nicole. Unfortunately, the women that I chose tended to be a little selfish. And coupled with that was my dad's teaching, the good stoic warrior male teaching of a man's number one responsibility is absolutely take good care of your partner, take good care of your family, be the best provider you can, and whatever happens, you're there to provide for them. Now, in the past, it could appear to me like I've been taken advantage of, but we're all complicit into the reality that we create for ourselves. But I learned from Nicole and others, one thing that was missing that I had to do, because it was this stoic trait, was I didn't know how to set healthy boundaries. And I needed to learn that vital lesson before I could have this beautiful relationship I have now. And so I did learn that lesson, and I ended my last relationship. It was like the first relationship I ever ended in my entire life. So it took me a long time to earn this valuable lesson. And I found a quote that spoke to me about that. I wanted to share it with you. It's by Steve Maraboli. It goes like this. Love yourself enough to take the actions required for your happiness, enough to cut yourself loose from a drama-filled past, enough to set a high standard for relationships, enough to feed your mind and body in a healthy manner, enough to forgive yourself, enough to move on. And I needed to learn that lesson, and I started really embodying these principles. And then, when I had done that, that allowed this relationship to grow from a mentor-mentee friendship-type relationship into a relationship that we both wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. And when we come to a relationship like that, when we both knew that we had done our work to become whole. So when the two came together, it was great. And we have our tough times. So when I'm having a tough time, Nicole walks by me, holds my hand, and lets me know that she's there for me. But she doesn't try and fix me in her way. And when she's struggling, I'm there for her. I don't try and fix her in their way. I've learned the male lesson of not trying to tell a woman how to fix things. So it's interesting. So we're talking, and I'm being compassionate and a good listener and all that. And she turns to me and stares at me with those beautiful eyes and say, "Now I'm ready for your wisdom." And I very much happily give it to her. I've been waiting forever for it. That's what I do. So I just wanted to share that with you because when we got here, now we can have this once upon a time relationship. We did the hard work first, and now everything is magical. We get together and we kid each other because we all know who we are. So like we always say in our household, Nicole's like this, Michael's like this, Haley's like this, Gabriel's like this, Laura's like this. And everyone says, "Oh, no, that's not me," and everyone knows they are. Well, what the beauty of it is that when you come and you don't have your buttons that you're being pushed and you're not projecting yourself on the others, this magical form of love happens. And I'm just so glad that I had a chance to share it with you and that this young lady came into my life and absolutely has transformed my life. And now enough of me, I'll let you hear the other side of the story.
Thank you. There You know what it is that we make fun of each other about? We're all a bunch of drama queens. Seriously? Biggest drama queen in the house, okay? Biggest drama queen in the house. Second biggest right there. I don't know. I'm like the last or whatever. It works for us. Thank you, Michael. That was great. So Lao Tzu, I read recently that he once said that being loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone gives you courage. Being loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone gives you courage. You think that's true? Yeah, it feels true, huh? And the strength and the courage. I'll tell you something, a secret. I was scared to death to be loved by him or to love him. And I'll tell you why in a little bit, you'll get it. But it's really been in this journey of our souls dance together that I've actually realized that in setting it all aside and letting down all those walls, I felt more strength and courage than I ever even thought was possible. And so I am just so excited when Josh and I got together to figure out who was speaking when. He goes, "It's Valentine's Sunday. You and Michael got to speak together." And I was like, okay. And so it was such a great opportunity to actually not only get to share with you all our fairy tale of meeting here at the Jewel by the Sea and falling in love, but really the depth and the spiritual practice and principles that went into this, because it was a lot of work. And so I'm a little hesitant, but I really want to share with you a personal story that's kind of hard for me to share, but I want to share it with you because, like Bill said, your story is our story, and there might be someone in here who could relate, and there's definitely a lot of lessons I learned, which I'm sure you'll see. So here it is. So I was a single mother at 18 and again at 21, and I met a man when I was in my early 20s, when I was 22, and we fell crazy in love. Oh my goodness, I did not know that love could be that powerful and insane and filled with, But both of us, what I came to realize is that both of us were like these tangled up people inside who didn't feel love from others and didn't know how to love ourselves, so we stuck together. And so although there was all this love, tremendous, powerful love, there were also a lot of bad habits that were picked up. A little bit too much drinking to hide the pain of not feeling loved. A little bit too much smoking, a little bit too many parties, a little bit too much this and that, all during college. And it was hard, because when you really love someone, it's hard to say, oh, crap, this is what codependency looks like, you know? And so we lived down in Tucson for a while, and at one point, the bad stuff just started to outweigh the good stuff, even though the love, this painful love, deep love, was always still there. So I packed me and the kids up, and we went back home to northern Arizona, and that was that. I got a new job. I was doing very well, very healthy, everything. I was going to the center up there. Things were going good. And then about 3 months later, I get a phone call from the man's mom, and she said, "You need to come to the hospital. He's not doing well." And so I rush down to the hospital, and I see him, and he's on life support. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "After you left, he just started drinking, and he didn't stop. And he developed this lung infection." And I was completely tore apart. I thought, my God, this man is about to die, and it's my fault. I did this to him. I left, and it ruined him. And the shame and the pain and the guilt, it was incredible. So I vowed from that moment on, I will stay here, and I will stay by your side, and if you get healthy, we'll figure this out together. And so I sat there by his bed in the intensive care unit for 6 weeks as he was getting better and then getting worse and then getting better and then getting worse. And as soon as he got better enough, he woke up. And he woke up, and he had strength in his hands, even though he had the breathing tube in him, and he wrote me a note, and he said, "I love you, and I'm sorry." And then he coded, and his heart stopped. And I was so ripped apart. My heart was just tore to pieces. Here I am, this young girl, finding love from someone that we felt was so intense and so strong. And then I leave to do better, and then this person dies. And so once I got myself together and realized, I scraped myself up off the ground of life and said, okay, I'm going to keep living. I'm going to choose that, yes, I'm going to live. I'm not going to die. That was an option. I vowed, okay, I'm going to live, but I'm going to be a damn good mom, and I don't care anything about relationships, okay? That was done. You know? I am over that. That's for the birds. Whew. And I did. For 5 years, I was a good mom. I am a good mom. And it felt good. It felt so good. I had this little trio, and we loved each other so much. And I started taking classes at these centers, and I started remembering this faith, this philosophy that says, yeah, there is suffering and struggling in the world, but boy, is there a mighty power for good. And beyond and in spite of and during all of our crap, all of our darkness, all of that icky stuff inside of us that we feel, Pull it all off, and what do you have? You have good. There is always remaining a good, and it's like this light. It's like that Browning light that says can never fully be extinguished. And I held on to the vision of this little light inside of me that just needed to expand. It needed to expand, so I kept taking classes. I kept coming to this centers. I kept remembering and hearing, okay, these are spiritual principles. These are spiritual practices, and I'm going to do it. By golly, I'm going to be a religious scientist and practice and see if they're right, you know? Just practice. And I practice. And I, like you said, I'm serious about my practice. And the funny thing about the affirmations is I'm like crazy about it. I'm like, sit down on the toilet and you're going to see one, right? But in my car on the dashboard, there was always one every month. And Reverend Josh and I used to go buy the food for the homeless every month. And every month he'd come in my car and say, okay, what's the new affirmation? It was like, it's so funny. But it's true because I have a lot of stuff that I could ruminate on. I have a lot of negative voices that could be taking up all my space. So I'm the kind of person who needs to write it on my hand before I go into a 12-hour shift at the hospital. I need to have a note in my pocket that says you're a divine being of God in the midst of chaos. I need to be reminded of that to train my mind and my body that I'm more than the material world, right? So it's everywhere. And I pray, and I meditate, and I do it because it works if you work it, you know? It works. And then, oh, I'm sorry for spitting. I came across this scientific idea that there's not really anything such as time or space, that they're not actually real things in and of themselves, but they're just concepts and measurement tools that we use to experience life, right? This is then, this is now, this is tomorrow. That's what time is. So the present moment is the only moment that there ever is. And tomorrow is still going to be this moment. And 10 years from now is still going to be this moment. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, if this is the only moment that there ever is, maybe someday I am with my perfect partner. And I would envision, maybe we're having Thanksgiving dinner together. And my vision was not so grand to see 100 other people having dinner with us, but I would envision that, I would see that, and I knew, and I said, you know what, that partner's amazing. Now I need to do some work on me to start untangling me inside, to start revealing my wholeness, like our intention for this year, so that I can be ready on a level playing field with this amazing partner that is somewhere in time with me. And so that's what I began to do. I began to realize and recognize and utilize the ideas and the philosophies of this faith, and voila, I created him. And what this reminds me of, just like with Reverend Michael, is that it doesn't matter if you're looking for a partner, it doesn't matter if you're married, or if we're talking about relationship with your children, or your parents, or your coworkers. When you enter into a relationship, knowing that you are whole, knowing that you don't get to fix them, and they don't get to fix you. Because we are crazy, we're funny, we're compassionate, we're bitchy sometimes, we're holy. That's what it means to be multifaceted. That's what it means to be whole. And so when we meet in relationship with people, and we say, I know that you're whole, and that means you got a lot of stuff. And I'm whole, and I got a lot of stuff. But I'm going to meet you where you are, and you meet me where I am at. And let's both agree that we'll work on our own stuff. And that's the beauty, and that's that magical, powerful being of relationship. And that's why this relationship works so well, is because there's no fixing. We're whole. I mean, we have issues, believe me, but we're whole, right? And I mean, there's nothing greater than knowing that I love me some me. Can you guys say that? I love me some me. When you start to believe that, let's say it again. I love me some me. And when you start believing that, man, the partners, the people in your life who can support that kind of consciousness, whoo, doggy, you know? It just takes it to the next level. It's like these groups of people I see sitting here together who I know, I remember when you first walked in, and now you're a group of like-minded people coming together. You raise that consciousness, that level. It's like, I see you all and I know that this works, and because you all came together as whole, and that's what this is about. And so, Michael, would you like to join me in a prayer?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do the first three and pass it. So I just want to close this morning as a family, recognizing that we are one spiritual unit. We are unique and individual and crazy beautiful and full of love and reverence and irreverence and the whole gamut. And there is such a beauty and good inside of us. I don't care what we've been through. There is such a joy and a love to our lives, and Spirit is always thrusting us forward. It's always pulling us forward into more and more good. And so I stand here and I affirm the joy and the comfort and the peace and the presence and power of a divine life in and through all of us right here and now. And so I pass to Reverend Michael.
And I now just take a moment and I speak my word with authority that I am so thankful that the life that each and every one of us has is the life of the divine. We're beautiful, we're radiant, we are joyful in our own way. And that life is powerful, that life is compassionate, that life is poignant, but most of all, that life is good. And I just give thank you for this life divine that is my life and your life right now. And let's ground it all together by saying together, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all.